Hi, and welcome to the Spawdcast. My name's Carrie Hyde, and I am your host and your pet's life coach. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that is a little difficult to talk about because it involves veterinary malpractice, veterinary negligence. And I think I'm the perfect person to talk about this and bring this subject to your attention because I've both worked in veterinary hospitals and I have seen negligence happen. I've also been the victim of being accused of doing some horrible things that did not happen. So being on both sides gives me a really good opportunity to be able to understand that there are really great veterinarians out there, but there are also veterinarians who are doing harm to your animals. And I think this is an important subject for us to talk about so we can help protect our animals, change some laws, and make some real change in veterinary medicine, not just for pet parents, but for veterinarians as well. So I brought on a guest today who's going to help us kind of weed through all of the laws and what's going on and the changes. And unfortunately, our guest that's on today is here because of the loss of an animal that he has had to go through the process of what veterinary negligence is. So I would like to introduce to you someone who's going to be very valuable in helping us understand this. So I'd like to welcome Scott Fine to the show. Hi, Scott. How are you?
Hi, Carrie. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. Scott started an organization called Joey's Legacy. And Joey's Legacy is obviously about his dog named Joey. But Scott, can you tell us a little bit? I know a lot of times, you do these podcasts and people talk a lot about it. But to me, I think the most powerful people who come out and be activists are the people who have had it happen to them. And I think it's important for us to talk about Joey. So can you just tell us a little bit about him? What kind of dog was he?
So Joey was a short-haired dachshund. He was 12 years old at the time of this tragedy. He was a very fun-loving little guy, had a lot of energy. When he was first born, he had a little problem with snarling at people and nipping at heels and that kind of thing. But, he sooner or later got over that. And then he'd hear the front door open when I got home from work, and he'd run up the ramp onto the couch. He'd roll over on his back and wait for a belly rub. And whenever he needed to go out, he would come find me. And I'd put his leash on, and he'd walk over to my wife if she was home and sit in front of her, look up at her as if to say, come with us. And of course she did. So he was a bright guy, and he was the shining star of our family. And we miss him like crazy.
Did you get him as a puppy?
Joey came to live with us when he was 8 weeks old. And so we're the only family he knew. And he grew up in an environment of a lot of love. Yeah. And it reflected in his personality. So
you may not know this, but my very first adult dog and love of my life was a black and tan dachshund named Tootsie. And Tootsie also passed away from what I believe was from flea and tick medication, and I was unaware of it at the time, and she suffered through seizures, and she is the reason that I fight and do what I do. And so we're very connected through a black and tan dachshund, and I didn't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so she was the love of my life, and that's why I say, the stories that come out from people like us and the love, and I don't know about your dachshund or anybody else who has a dachshund, but just they love to burrow, right, underneath the blankets and stay warm, and so Tootsie would, and I'm sure Joey did too, go down and warm up by our feet and stuff, so they bring a lot to us, which is why when something like this happens, we fight so hard, because the connection that you can have. Oh, there's a picture of little Joey as a puppy up on my screen right now, which is just adorable. There's nothing cuter, I think, sometimes than a puppy dachshund. They're so adorable. So tell us, let's kind of fast forward a little bit, and Joey gets sick. What led you to the veterinarian in the first place?
So I guess I'll start the story. Halloween 2016, Joey had some gastrointestinal issues common issues. So we brought him to the vet. They hadn't resolved after a few days, so we brought him to the vet. Joey's regular vet wasn't there that day. So there was a substitute vet, and he ran some labs, gave Joey some Flagyl, and made the point to tell us that senior dogs need labs more frequently to try to intercept any potential issues that could,
He said they need labs more frequently?
Yeah, he said senior dogs need labs more frequently, which made sense to me. That was fine. And, Joey went home. Symptoms resolved the next day. And so we're good for 8 months. So fast forward to June of 2017, same GI symptoms. Again, Joey's regular vet wasn't there that morning. Same guy was there. And this time he does a quick head to tail exam and turns around and starts walking out of the room. I said, we're going to do labs. He said, someone will be right in. Didn't answer the question. Next thing I knew, the vet tech came in with a syringe, which I presume would be to draw blood for the labs. Instead, she just plunged it into his backside, his hind leg. And I said, we're supposed to be doing labs here. And she said, no, doctor ordered a shot of Convenia, which of course I knew nothing about. I asked her, what's Convenia? And she said, well, you'll have to talk to the doctor about that.
Just really quick, let me back you up just so we're real clear. What was the name of the shot that they gave her? Him? Sorry.
Convenia, C-O-N-V-E-N-I-A.
Okay, so Convenia.
Kind of a takeoff of convenience, because what it's intended for is skin and soft tissue infections. It was originally marketed by Zoetis for that. Okay. And it was designed to replace 14 days of PO meds, pills by mouth. It kind of makes it easier for the pet parent. They don't have to try to give pills every day to their loved one. It's just the one shot, which is good for 14 days. Okay,
so, and you weren't, this shot was given before any side effects, potential side effects, or benefits were discussed with you?
Absolutely, there was no discussion at all.
Okay, okay.
You go when you've had great vets for years and years and years. You've never had an experience like this. You have no reason not to mistrust.
Correct.
So you rely on the expertise of the practitioner.
Sure.
Took Joey home. He didn't get better. We brought him back the next day. Regular vet was there, did labs immediately, and determined that Joey had a kidney infection. Zoetis clearly states in their marketing materials that there's 3 categories of animals not to give Convenia to: lactating animals, animals less than 6 weeks old, and dogs and cats with kidney dysfunction, renal dysfunction. So unfortunately, had those labs been done on day 1, we would have determined the renal dysfunction then, and presumably he wouldn't have gotten the shot of Convenia, which ends up being a nephrotoxic drug, and was for him. So the 3rd day, after being kept overnight, we got a call the next morning. Prognosis is poor. You need to make a decision. So that afternoon, obviously, we're not going to let Joey suffer.
Right.
So we said goodbye to Joey that afternoon.
Wow, I'm so sorry. And that's just such a difficult decision to have to put our animals down, but then to have to at some point you realize that what the cause was, right?
Well, and again, this is my first ever experience with a potentially negligent veterinarian.
Right.
So I brought in 2 or 3 independent vets, and I had them review the records. And all 3 of them said there's plenty of renal-friendly drugs that he could have gotten on day 1 had the labs been done, and more likely than not, he would have survived that veterinary visit.
Ouch.
So, yeah.
That's difficult. So then, I guess I'm going to go back a little bit, because you become an activist. I mean, this brings you and your wife into a whole different realm. But just to be clear, prior to, losing Joey, Did you ever do any activism? Were you outspoken about anything?
I was the quiet guy in the middle of the crowd. People, friends and family will tell you that. No, I was never, I was never an outgoing guy like that. But you know what, Carrie, it's amazing how something like this can turn you from a pacifist into an activist.
That's amazing.
And that's exactly what happened. We decided we're going to form a group or try to see if we can assist others that have been through what we've been through. That's what we started.
How quickly did you realize that this isn't just an isolated incident and it could potentially be affecting possibly millions of animals across the country?
A couple of months, I would say, till we started looking, we formed our Facebook group, Joey's Legacy, Vet Mal Victims, and anyone is welcome to join our group if they'd like. And so we formed this group. We started getting a few people here and there. I would say, and that was in October of 2017, I would say probably by the end of the year, we had a pretty good idea that we weren't the only ones that had this experience.
Wow. And that's pretty scary. So I had mentioned in the beginning of this that I have seen veterinary negligence. And so I'm going to share a quick story with you real quick. As a vet tech, I was very young, and I had a kitten come in that had been hit by a car, and she broke her leg. I was working at a low-cost veterinarian hospital at the time, and the cat had had its x-rays done at another veterinarian hospital. But we were going to do the surgery because it was much cheaper to have the surgery done in our animal hospital. That day, I know very specifically that the veterinarian never looked at the x-rays. He just assumed he knew what leg it was, and of course it resulted in him amputating the wrong leg, and ultimately the cat lost his life, but the vet didn't even get a slap on the wrist. Nothing happened. Nothing came of it other than the cat losing his life. And so these things do happen. I've witnessed it happen. At 19, I didn't know what to do about it, and that's why I want to bring you on and talk about it, because I don't want to just talk to pet parents. I want to talk to kennel attendants, veterinarian technicians, veterinarians who are working in veterinarian hospitals with veterinarians who are doing negligent acts. I want to be able to communicate this to everybody and kind of see something, say something. I wish I would have said something at that time. So that's why I have you here. So you form Joey's Legacy, and I'm so grateful that you exist. I wish you would have existed, years and years and years and years ago as my career continued and I saw more and more cases of this. So Joey's Legacy is it's a 501c, correct? So it's a charity.
Yes, correct.
So
yes.
Let's talk a little bit about how it works. So let's assume a pet parent thinks that their pet was negligently harmed. They don't have to necessarily die, right? You could cause harm. Okay. Right. So what would be what happens next?
So I'll get an email on our website, or a text message on Messenger, or someone will post in the group and ask, can anyone help me? So I'll direct them to email me on our website so we can have a private discussion about it. So the first step is really just to email the animal hospital records to one of our vets. And, we have vets with expertise. A few of them are our former emergency medicine veterinarians. So situations that end in an ER, or where an ER was part of the treatment, I would send them to one of those vets. We have pet parents with horses. We have a couple of equine law and medicine experts, veterinarians on our team. We've got 8 veterinarians right now on our team. And so they'll review the hospital records. Some review at no cost. Some charge a very nominal fee, and they'll offer an opinion. If the opinion is that negligence, in fact, occurred, they'll offer to write an opinion letter, which the pet parent would take to one of the attorneys in the state where the malpractice occurred. There are times where I'll send a member to one of the vets. The vet's opinion doesn't quite align with theirs, and I'll get, they'll come back to me and they'll say, that vet doesn't know what they're talking about. Can you have another vet? So my answer is always, sure. Here's vet number 2. And, you know, they want to go see vet number 3. They can see all 8 vets. Normally it ends at 3. And they finally realize after 3 vets say the same thing, that there's nothing to see here, that they should consider just that that's the reality.
Right.
And they need to move on.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I never dissuade them from speaking to another vet. We've never gone past 3. So by the 3rd vet, you know, they all understand it. There's nothing there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something really, I had mentioned in the beginning of this also that I've been on both sides. I think it's important to realize that when we're in an emotional state, sometimes we want it to be somebody's fault. You're right. We really desperately, for a couple reasons, because it's hard to imagine that we've lost the love of our life, you know, this animal that we've cared for since they were 8 weeks old, that they just died. And also, if it's not someone else's fault, does it become my fault? Right? So we get very scared and, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? And it's much easier to blame than it is. And I would say, and I don't know if you would agree with me, I think that that is more often the case than the negligence. Would you agree?
Well, let me give you some statistics that I happen to put together for.
I love statistics. Not when I was in college, but I like it now.
Every member that wants to join our group has to answer a few questions. One of the questions is, have you ever had a bad experience with a veterinarian? I took the last 100 people that joined. 87 of them said, I've never had a bad experience with a veterinarian. I'm only in this group because I know this stuff goes on and I want to see what I can learn so that I can better advocate for my loved one. So 13 obviously said they did have a bad experience. And based on percentages that we try to keep, we don't have it super accurate. But out of those 13 that believe that are setting forth allegations of veterinary negligence, it happens that 9 of those 13 are right. Our vet team finds negligence in those cases. Okay. So 4 out of the 13, nothing to see here.
Right, right.
So those 9 are offered the opportunity to for the vet to write the letter, as I mentioned earlier, and we move on to the law group in the state where the malpractice occurred.
That's a high number.
It's crazy high.
So of the cases that you get that are confirmed and go through with the attorneys, what do you see the most of? What types of negligence are we talking about?
Dental cleanings by far that go bad because of anesthesia.
Really?
You know, yeah, absolutely. You know, the dial was on 5, it should have been on 2. The patient went into cardiac arrest. We tried to resuscitate, unable to resuscitate, the patient passed away.
I wonder why. That's interesting to me that it would be just from, not just from, but as a dental versus going under anesthesia for a spay or neuter. Do you know why there's a difference between that?
I do not.
Yeah. And
understand that I, in the position I'm in, do not have access to everyone's case.
Right.
You know, I make it a point to tell them my role here is to refer you to the vet. And then if we need to go further, I'll refer you to the attorney. The rest of it is between you and the professionals. I'm not asking for you to come back to me. I just want to know that they're treating you right is basically it. You know, obviously can't guarantee the outcome, but we're dealing with professionals, and very, very, very few problems in 3.5 years.
Wow, to think that you bring your animal in for a dental cleaning and they don't get to come home is heartbreaking.
Terrible.
Especially from a person like me as a pet nutritionist. I fight very, very hard about preventative dental care so that you don't end up. So I'm going to put a little plug in there for that. Please understand that there are ways naturally to keep your pet's teeth clean. That's my little dig on that. So after dental care, what other types of negligence are we seeing a lot of?
The spay and the neuter, like you mentioned, that would be probably the next most frequent situation. And we had a recent case, well, maybe not recent anymore. It's been probably 6 months or more, where the pet parent brought her loved one in for a neuter or a spay, can't remember. And the doctor comes out and says, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm really sorry. We lost your pet. We found cancer throughout the pet's body. This was a pet parent that was knowledgeable, educated, and advocated well, and knew that absolutely was not the truth.
Right.
So, and of course, the veterinarian offered to do the necropsy, which is obvious conflict of interest. So the pet parent said, "Give my baby back to me." She took the pet to an independent veterinarian who did the necropsy, and not only was there not cancer in the dog's body, the independent vet found blood vessels that were severed. Ooh. So the patient bled internal bleeding, internal hemorrhage, and that's what really happened.
Wow.
So the pet parent came to me and told me, well, anyway, that case, damage award was very much enhanced because now we have fraud. Misrepresentation.
Right.
Involved. So, and this is one point I do want to make. It's no longer just compensatory damages. We're going to give you back your veterinary costs and the replacement value. And I have a hard time with that anyway. I don't know what replacement value really means. There's no value for our loved one.
Sure.
But now there are other possibilities, including common law fraud, misrepresentation, concealment, and there's just a lot more that can go into one of these cases now.
Well, that's exactly why I think your organization is so important. Sometimes people can sit back. When I talked about wanting to bring you on the show, I always communicate with people in the industry and get their thoughts on it. And, I get a lot of stuff like, oh, well, it's just a bunch of angry pet parents because their dogs died. And it's so much more than that. And not that should be just, but it's also about letting pet parents know what the laws are and why those laws need to be changed, which is the next thing I really want to talk about. Is let's kind of define. I know each state is different, so I want to make that really clear. Each state is different, so anything that we say here, you need to check the specific laws in your state. I know Florida has better laws than California does as far as what your pets are considered. But I know from being in an industry and being a business owner and knowing the laws in California, our pets are seen as property here, and therefore there's very little, or up until now has been very little recourse for you if your pet is injured or harmed or killed inside one of these facilities where you trust. So can you help us understand a little bit about what the laws mostly are throughout the United States?
Well, we lived for years with the notion that pets are property. All right, every state pretty much, signifies that. I was unwilling to accept that notion, even though it was law. And that's part of the motivation to create a Joey's Legacy and to try to talk to attorneys and try to get them to think outside the box. And I'm
Right.
talking about the ones that are real animal advocates, the one that own horse farms,
Right.
the ones that start 501c3s for shelters and other things. They're away from their law practice. They love animals.
Yeah.
And it shows. Okay. So I literally called 73 law firms in the state of Florida and said, I got to sue this guy. And there's more to that story. He scrubbed records before he sent them to the state. And of course, I have my copies, and he added stuff. But that's a common thing, unfortunately.
He got rid of some of his records? Is that what you're saying?
I went to pick up Joey's records a week after he passed away. And I looked at them. They were totally accurate. Everything on there was totally accurate.
Okay.
When I filed my complaint with the state of Florida, and they sent him a letter saying, we've got a complaint, send us all the records on this dog. The records he sent
were not.
Had additions to what, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I'll give you one example.
Wow.
When I first met this guy, then the first encounter with this guy, he talked about, Joey had a lipoma on his tail, not a big one. He said, we normally don't remove these unless they interfere with the dog walking or some other lifestyle issue where it needs to be.
Let me interrupt you 1 second. A lipoma is considered a fatty cyst. I just want our listeners to know. So he had a little fatty cyst on his tail?
He had a little fatty cyst on his tail. And in the original records that I picked up after Joey died, he correctly told owner that, not to remove or something along those lines.
Right.
The records that he sent to the state, when my lawyer called me, he said, you're not going to believe this. Ugh. He actually wrote on there, told owner to remove lipoma. He refused. And there were a few other things. Yeah. I don't want to take time with all that. Anyway, the records were scrubbed. And anyway.
You think he was trying to start a precedent that you aren't listening to his advice?
Yeah, of course.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
From my own experience, and I wasn't in that vet room, so I'm certainly not going to go that far, but I can tell you every vet I ever worked for didn't recommend removing lipomas.
Right, and it makes
that was more common practice for what I've seen, is not necessarily removing them. Unless they were bothersome to the dog, they didn't really recommend removing them. So.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what he told me during the first encounter.
Right, right.
Once he knew he was in trouble with the state, he started doing anything to denigrate me as a pet parent.
So I think it's also important. Hadn't he been in trouble with the state before?
He had 2 prior sustained complaints, once in 2012 and the other one 2015. And Joey's case was 2017 at a time when he was still on probation from the 2015 case.
Wow.
So I brought that to the attention of the state. I said, "Are you gonna charge this guy with violation of probation?"
And no.
Of course, the vet board thing, that's a whole different thing that we can talk about in a little while. But so anyway, getting back to your original, I didn't mean to digress there. So as far as the laws go, I've been invited to speak to the Arizona State Legislature in the next week or two regarding Thor's Law, which and then there's a sponsorship in the House there, and what this will do will be to open the door to not only emotional distress, loss of companionship, non-monetary damages like that, which typically are not available in the cases of pets, but it will also potentially include punitive damages. It's going to also address, it's absolutely, it's going to also address the pets of property versus sentient creatures debate that's been raging for years. So this will all tie together. Hopefully we'll make an impression, and hopefully the legislature there will enact this law. Of course, in 2016, the Supreme Court in the state of Oregon ruled that animals are sentient creatures. There's been a few cases that have that are on appeal right now.
They said, Oregon said they're what?
Sentient creatures. In other words, like us.
Okay.
They can feel, they can think, they have emotions.
Okay.
Just like, and pets are, they are our family.
Sure.
They are our loved ones. You know, they want to be, you know, those that want to classify them as property simply do that so that you'll not even think about suing a vet, since you're only going to get $100 in court, maybe, if you're lucky, if you win. We fell for that propaganda for years. No one really challenged that. But once I started hearing from all of these law firms in Florida, pets are property, cases are too expensive, you're not going to get any money back, we can't spend our time with that. And I got that literally 73 times until I found number 74, who ends up being Joey's attorney.
Well, thank God
he said,
you kept going.
I'll take it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so so laws will change. I do believe by 2025, most of the states in the United States will have laws that recognize the value of canines and felines and equines and all of the animals we hold dear and we consider family and loved ones.
Yeah, it needs to happen on levels that I don't think people really understand. I do some consultations for boarding facilities and grooming shops. I have people call me and ask me how to set them up. And inevitably, one of the questions I'm always asked is how much insurance should they cover? And I have had people during these consultations say to me, well, if an animal ends up dying here, there's not really any recourse they can get. That's a mindset that needs to change, because if we have veterinarians, boarding facilities, grooming, dog walkers, daycares, whatever it is, opening up under the assumption that it doesn't matter if I have enough people here to watch your dog. If it doesn't matter if your dog gets injured here because I'm only going to have to pay $50. That goes into dog food companies, all of them. So this organization stretches far and wide. I mean, we've seen dog food companies and drug companies put stuff out that they know is going to hurt and harm your animal, but they know that the recourse, they can make more money off of the sale of it and not have to worry about being sued because they won't have to pay so much. So the importance of changing these laws and turning animals. Now, what do you think about going too far, right? Like, I heard a case one time, it was actually out of Florida, and it was a boarding facility who was negligent for the death of an animal. And the owner of the dog was suing for I know I'm probably off on this number, but it was like $3.5 million. So we have to be careful there, right? Because then you get into a whole different ball game of it. And do you think that there's any risk of us going too far and not being taken serious?
I think a case is worth what it's worth. Personally, again, this is more of a question for an attorney, but personally, you could ask for $3.5 million, you could ask for $2 million, you could ask for $100,000. The case is worth what it's worth.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, I would sit and smile at a case like that. Absolutely, I would love that. Yeah. Because the point we're trying to get to is that our animals have so much value to us. They're family members, they're loved ones. Let me give you another example, Carrie. You know, I hear people come to me, you know, the vet charged me $5,000 for the surgery, $8,000, $11,000, $19,000 for the surgery.
Jeez. Something
goes wrong, and they say, well, go ahead and sue me. Your animal's only worth $100 or something. You can't have it both ways. It's disingenuous. You can't have it both ways. Either charge us $100 for the surgery, or allow us to increase damage awards,
right,
to compensate us for some of these situations. I mean, you can't have it both ways. It's just disingenuous.
No, that makes perfect sense. A vet can't say, oh, your pet is only worth $100. unless I'm doing surgery, and then he's worth millions. And you should pay me everything that I should be get. Exactly. That's such a good point. I've actually seen that in my facility where someone will bring an animal in and say it's the love of their life and it's everything to them. And it's the opposite, but it's from a pet parent, and, do everything, whatever it takes. And then they'll bring in, maybe a dog for grooming that's matted and they didn't take care of it. And now they don't want to spend the money to fix it. And I'm like, you don't get it. I thought this was the love of your life. It's same thing. You can't have it both ways. It either is or isn't important to you. So let's go back to, you're going to be speaking in front of the Arizona legislation, you said, right?
A Zoom meeting, but yeah,
okay.
I'll be addressing them about these issues.
And you said something about Noah's Law. Did I get that right?
The Arizona law is Thor's Law,
Thor's Law.
Thor's Law.
Thor's Law. Is that
Thor
named?
Was a cat.
Thor was a cat? Okay.
Yeah.
And so they managed to get this out there. Will that only be changing the law for Arizona, or do you think that's going to be the precedent for us?
Well, hopefully it'll be the precedent. I mean, what we always wish is that veterinarians were regulated on a federal level. Of course, they're not. They're regulated by state.
Right.
And so we have 50 state boards of veterinary medicine that do a very poor job of disciplining firmly and fairly. Joey's vet, at his final hearing in December of 2018, when it was his turn to go up and address the board, he literally wept like a child, won the hearts of the two consumer advocates on that board. One of them made a motion to dismiss count one, and the other one seconded the motion. The other five, the five vets voted unanimously, and out the door went count one. Well, count one was the practice below the standard of care count, which included, number one, failure to perform the required labs prior to giving the convenia to Joey. Number two, failure to address Joey's vomiting. And number three, introducing a contraindicated drug into an animal. And so those three were dismissed. He was left with the token record-keeping violation, which is he failed to document vital signs, failure to note the dosage of the convenia, things like that. And it's a $1,000 fine and slap on the hand and don't do it again. But he's a serial offender. He's an habitual offender. That was his third sustained complaint. First one was 2012, 2015. Second one, Joey's, was resolved in 2018. That's every 3 years. This is 2021, 3 years later. So we'll see.
So to be clear, the only thing he was charged with was failure to keep proper records.
Right, exactly.
And he's still practicing veterinary medicine to this day.
As far as I know.
And that was his third?
Yes.
In front of the board?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what was the fine for not keeping proper records?
$1,000 or $2,000. It's never much.
Yeah. Certainly,
and
certainly not enough to make somebody change the way that they're doing practice.
Exactly. And you're never going to deter this kind of misconduct because they know they're just going to get a slap on the hand, and they don't have to exercise a great deal of care.
Well, clearly, given that this was his third time in front of the board, clearly it's not working. So
right, and the irony of it, Carrie, is the fact that in the state of Florida and other states as well, disciplinary action for second and subsequent offenders is pretty tough. They can impose a suspension of up to a year. I'm not going to say never, but they almost never do.
Right.
Because they tend to coddle their own colleagues when it comes to disciplinary action. I mean, there's plenty of compelling evidence to support that argument. Wow. I mean, you can go back to 2003 in Florida and review all of their the minutes from their quarterly meetings, and in the disciplinary action section, you'll see nothing. You'll see $1,000 fine, two a year probation, 2 years probation, which doesn't really do anything. They can
No.
still practice.
No.
So it's kind of a waste of time. They refuse to discipline firmly and fairly. And if they did, Jerry Robb's book would be about half the size.
Right, right. Which we're going to talk about as I move us towards some solutions and what our pet parents can do. But before I do, I just want to ask you another question. Do you only take care, because I know, I'm in I've moved away from veterinary medicine and I do a lot more boarding and daycare and grooming. And if someone's dog was left on a grooming table, for example, and the groomer left it there to go answer a phone and the dog falls off, which, by the way, happens in grooming shops all the time, are these other types of cases you will also take, or does it have to only be veterinarian?
Now, our attorneys will handle veterinary negligence, pet custody cases, pet trusts, dog bites, groomers, animal shelters, and of course, service and emotional support animals.
Okay. So then let's talk a little bit about so I know you're a 501c, and so when someone contacts you, and let's say they don't have any money, what resources do they have? I know we're going to be talking about, and I hope our listeners will be generous and donate to your organization because it is necessary. But how would it work a little bit? Let's say I contact you, and then what happens?
Okay, so several of our vets will review at no cost.
Right. Good.
There's no money needed there. If they determine that negligence occurred, they will write a letter for hundreds, not thousands, like if you reach out to an outside expert witness in veterinary medicine, they're in the thousands.
Okay.
For the expert letter. Most of our vets, I think all of our vets actually, it's in the low hundreds. So you don't need a lot of money. And a lot of our attorneys are now just running with the vet letter. And we've got a few that'll do the whole, their case pro bono.
Okay.
For the victim.
Okay.
I've got one attorney in Georgia that he said, just bring me the letter. They're all on contingency. I won't charge them anything.
That's amazing.
I won't charge them the right to demand letter.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
and we need these cases. So it's not about, yay, we have these attorneys that'll do everything for us for free. It's about the more cases that are out there and are proven to be negligence, that's how the laws get changed. And if the laws get changed, then the actual death of the animals is less likely to occur. That's how I look at it.
Exactly right.
When you have an animal who has been lost due to negligence and you don't want to bother with it and you just don't think it's going to be worth it, I encourage you, I know Scott would encourage you to know that we need these cases. We wish they didn't occur, but we also need to talk about them so that we can change the laws, because ultimately that's all we can do to prevent it.
I'm very, very straightforward. I'm very candid with every person that comes to me. Everyone should file a complaint with the state board, with their state board. Is it going to lead anywhere? Probably not. However, it's important to make the vet board aware that this situation occurred, and what they choose to do about it is up to them. So here's another fact that you should be aware of. 70 to 80% of all complaints that are filed with vet boards are dismissed, usually early on.
Wow.
In contrast, our vet team says about 60 to 70% of cases they review indicate negligence. So
70 to 80% are dismissed from the state board.
Right.
But did you say 70 to 80?
60 to 70.
60 to 70 are confirmed negligence from the attorneys. Ooh, that's very upsetting.
It's very telling. It really is. I mean, that says a lot about the way the veterinary justice system in this country is so corrupt, broken, and in major need of reform.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. We have to be our pets' advocates. So this is going to be a hard question for me to ask you. But if you could do something different, going back to that hospital with Joey, what would you do differently now?
If I had a chance to redo Joey's experience?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Just push and push for labs, obviously.
Right.
If labs had been done, he would have seen that the kidney values were elevated. He could have given him, instead of a nephrotoxic drug, he could have given him some renal-friendly antibiotics to try to deal with the situation.
Right.
And as I mentioned before, the 3 independent vets that I went to said Joey, more likely than not, would have survived that veterinary visit.
Yeah, yeah. It's a weird dynamic because, like most you guys know, I've been on both sides. Sometimes a client comes in and they don't have a lot of money and they don't want to do all these labs. They can't afford it. And so sometimes they put the veterinarian in this situation where they're like, well, I don't have the money, and just can you give me something? I would encourage you, and I know Scott would too, is to please pay for the labs, right? Like we can't force our vets into a corner and then be angry when things go wrong. So those labs are important. They show us what to do, what not to do.
Right.
We do need them. I do agree sometimes veterinarians go overboard with some stuff. I've seen that also happen. So you need to know, I think if, I can kind of speak for you, although I think you would say this, would you agree asking what that medication was before giving to Joey, if you could see the side effects, right, of it before
Absolutely.
We allow a drug?
And then this is another major problem in the industry today. There's no disclosure of side effects. And I think in a lot of cases, vets don't even know what they are.
Yeah, I agree.
But part of the book, and I know I don't want to jump ahead, but part of the book, when people read it, how to better advocate for their pets, ask questions, don't be afraid.
Right.
And if you don't have that smooth relationship with your veterinarian, you need to find another one, because we're talking about lives.
Yeah, you are. You can't be passive when you're in a veterinarian hospital office. Your pet cannot speak. You have to speak up for your pet. And you need to ask what the side effects are. You need to ask what it is. Ask to see the inserts, because a lot of times veterinarians, I guarantee you, a lot of times veterinarians don't know the side effects. Right. They don't even know. I recently was speaking to a veterinarian who had no idea that the FDA just reported that flea and tick medication can be linked to seizures. Had no idea that happened. So, and she was selling the drug. So Don't assume your vet knows everything. You need to know everything that's going in your pet's body and what it is.
Absolutely.
But let's talk a little bit about the book. So there's a book coming out. What is it? Tell me a little bit about the book.
The name of the book is Joey's Legacy, Seeking Truth and Integrity in Veterinary Medicine. It's already on Amazon. You can order it on Amazon now. And the book primarily is made up of 325 pages, including 45 victim stories. Each victim tells a story, very difficult to read, very difficult to read. I was able to get through some of them. Some of them I literally had to stop and close the book and walk away. It's just too tough to read. The author is J.L. Robb, best-selling author of the series called The End, the book, the series. 7 volumes right now. Fantastic writer.
Wow.
Very imaginative. And I met JL through a friend of mine who said, you need to talk to this guy. And so we traded a few emails, and we had a conversation, and he said, it sounds pretty bizarre. I've had Great Danes my whole life. I've had great vets for 35 years. And I said, you know what, Jerry, me too. I have too, until we hit a brick wall with Joey. This is a story that needs to be told. And we tried the entire time prior to meeting Jerry to find someone that would help tell our story, someone that would do a documentary. We reached out to the national media, zero interest. Jerry put down his current work that he was working on, and he said, you know what, okay, let's do this. So Jerry started to put the book together. That was last July.
Yeah.
And it's out now.
But like you said,
just,
it's not just stories, right? It's also, it's going to help you understand how to protect your pet.
exactly.
Right.
And we address my two major issues with the industry: practitioners that refuse to be honest and forthcoming with their pet parents, and the vet boards. And again, I want to make sure everyone understands, let nothing I say make you think that I'm talking about the entire industry. We know, I've seen stats in my own group.
Yeah.
I know from personal experience, the overwhelming majority of vets are caring, compassionate. Sure. They do a great job. They entered the profession because they really do have a profound love for animals.
Yeah.
And they want to provide great care. And they do. We address that subset of vets that where a negligent act occurs, something happens during a spay or a neuter or something, and instead of just grinding their teeth, going to the pet parent and saying, I don't know how to tell you, demonstrating remorse, contrition, I don't know how to tell you this, I'm sorry we lost your dog, or we lost your cat.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm talking about the subset that where something happens and the wheels are already turning. What can I tell them? What can I tell them?
What lie can I come up with?
What kind of BS can I come up with?
Right.
That'll make them think that I did everything I could. Those are the practitioners that need to realize this very startling fact. And I think I'm probably the de facto expert on victims of veterinary negligence in the country because I've spoken with hundreds of them. I don't know if there's any agency or any individual that's been in my position, but
that's a lot. That's a lot to take on.
And a lot of them say to me, you know what, Carrie? A lot of them say to me, look, if the vet had just come to me, hat in hand, been totally truthful and transparent,
sure,
and demonstrate, if they were contrite about what happened, they would. I eventually, after I got over my anger and my all the depression and the despair, I think I probably could have found a path to forgiveness. Instead, because they chose to lie to me and demoralize, denigrate me.
Yeah.
That's why I stood in front of their vet practice with picket signs. That's why they got a very unflattering review on Google and Yelp. That's why I sought legal action through Joey's Legacy. It's the retaliation part.
In a weird way, it got you to this, and this needs to be done. And so I just, we're going to wrap this up here a little bit. Can you just really quickly tell our listeners where they can get the book, how they can contact you, any phone numbers or anything? And this will also be on our show notes, so you'll have access to all of that. If you follow the Spa at all, which is my facility, on our website, we will have all the links to Joey's Legacy in case you ever need to get a hold of anybody there. So all those links will be both in our show notes and on our website as well. So I encourage you to do that and find those as well. I also have a group we just started at the spa called Millie's House. All of the information is also on Millie's House. It's a brand new group. I encourage you to be a part of that. You can ask questions there and I can help there as well. So, but for contacting you, Scott, how can we do that?
Okay, so our website is joeyslegacy.org. Anyone that's interested in purchasing Volume 1, there's a hardcover, a softcover, and an ebook available. If you purchase the hardcover edition and you drop me a line at joeyslegacy.org, just let me know you purchased that hardcover. I will send you the ebook version of Joey's book, and I'll send you the first 2 volumes of the book, series, which is J.L. Robb's best-selling series of
great
of
deal.
books.
That's awesome.
Okay.
That's
so
awesome.
You get three ebooks free of charge. If you would like to join our vet mal group, it's Joey's Legacy Vet Mal Victims on Facebook.
Okay.
Just, if you need assistance or if you just want to see what's going on, obviously it's not a super happy place because
Sure.
people come to us with after probably dealing with the worst experience of their lives.
Right.
But I guarantee you'll learn more than you could have ever imagined. And I will tell you, if you do buy Jerry's book and you read it cover to cover and you are a pet parent, you will come out much more educated and much more enlightened than you could have ever imagined. Some of the things that you'll read about in that book, you cannot even imagine.
One of the best things you can do, right, is to educate yourself for your pets.
Absolutely.
So, a little quick question on that side. Is Joey's Legacy still looking for veterinarians and attorneys to become part of your organization to help?
Especially veterinarians,
Okay.
I've been contacted by a lot of veterinarians over the last 3.5 years. I'd love to join you, but I'm kind of uncomfortable writing an opinion letter about a colleague.
Yeah.
And that slows things down dramatically. Fortunately, we've got 8 veterinarians that don't have that fear, and they're willing to step up and do the right thing.
Right.
Attorneys, we have a database of over 150 attorneys, but if there are any attorneys that can leave the pets of property propaganda in the background and are willing to think outside the box, I would love to have you. I'm going to give you a real quick example, Carrie.
Yeah.
I accidentally, literally, fate or whatever you want to call it, accidentally got connected with an attorney in the Northeast. And I said, are you willing to join our, thinking that he was an animal law attorney. He said, how did you even get to me? I said, what do you mean? He said, I've been doing divorce law for 35 years. But tell me what it sounds interesting. Tell me what you do. After 15 minutes, he said, I'll take one of your cases.
Oh, wow.
And we happen to have a case that was ready for that state anyway. So, yeah. So it's just a matter of thinking outside the box.
Sure.
And understanding that things are changing.
Yeah.
By 2025, I think we're going to see a whole different landscape.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because for years I have said, I hope someone, if I'm ever negligent for injuring an animal, I hope someone can sue me. I should be able to. And I think the veterinarians that are on board with you also recognize that if you are negligent, you should be held accountable, no matter who you are. It keeps us in check. It keeps us understanding about what's going on. And I know that Dr. Jean Dodds is helping you, correct? Yeah, and she's been on our show many times. And so I was so honored to hear somebody that I follow and someone that I believe in believes in this, because it's just reinforcement of a great veterinarian.
So here's the bottom line, Carrie, okay? If we can get the segment of the 70,000 plus veterinarians in small animal practice to knock off the dishonesty, just tell the truth.
Just tell the truth.
We're mature adults. We can handle it. Just tell us the truth.
Yeah.
That's all we want.
That's it.
If we can resolve that, and then we get the vet boards to really do their jobs, then there's no Joey's Legacy book.
Right.
Because that's what it's really about.
Yeah. No, that's the goal, right? No Joey's Legacy book. Well, Scott, I have to say I'm just so impressed with what you're doing. I'm saddened that what brought you here had to be the loss of your dog. I'm saddened that the loss of my dog brought me here, but it is what keeps us going. And so Joey definitely has left behind a little spot in, I think, a lot of people's hearts. And so I thank you for that. Our listeners, thank you for that. The Spawdcast will be donating to your organization, and I hope that our listeners will also be donating to help keep this going, to get the laws changed. As I'm looking right now at Joey's picture, I see Tootsie in there. Tootsie Roll. I thought I was I was like 19, and I thought that was the most genius name for a dachshund to be called Tootsie Roll. So, and then I one day wanted to get a red one and call him Oscar Mayer Wiener, and and then I found out that was actually very common. But But thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And please keep in touch, and we'll talk soon, okay? Thank you very much, Scott.
My pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all for listening. As I mentioned before, you can get all of these information that you need to contact Scott, to contact me. You can get on his Facebook group. You can get on Millie's Facebook group to help you with any questions or anything that you need. As always, I'm always available through phone consultations. If you want to reach out to the spa, you know the number there. You can contact us. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're not aware of that, that's brand new. It's only been out for about a season, so you can see this. Not only can you listen to it on your way to work, but you can watch it when you get home. See the pictures of Joey and some of the other wonderfully fabulous animals that we've had on the show. Take care, everybody. Bye. Thank you.